Well, hello, everybody, and welcome again to another edition of Average Superstar TV. I'm your host, Lauren Lepre. Please hit that subscribe button on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon, Stitcher, and iHeartRadio. We drop a new show every Monday morning. This week, we're back in the music world. I've got two new filmmakers here. Actually, I have a very good connection with this one. So, right now, these two boys just did a documentary called Lansdale Forever with the great Dave Heck here, who actually 10 years ago helped me do the Lansdale part of the Pennsylvania hardcore documentary. So I know he's like the executive producer, as well as the executive producer in the Pennsylvania hardcore documentary. So Dave gets to double down and have bragging points on that one. And then Jason Zoblin is the director of this film, and these two got an awesome story because I've always had a special love for Lansdale, that Lansdale, Phoenixville area. I would say the Pennsylvania hardcore documentary dropped in summer of 2014. And why I got some great feedback and people bring it up, here and there, I feel the Lansdale crew, everybody I met down there, seems to be the most appreciative of that so many years later. So I'm thankful for that. And I've always wondered, as a filmmaker, nobody owns the scene. We are one. Anyone could just pick up the ball at any time and do something. I was wondering when something was going to happen. Like, was something like this, someone going to pick one up in Philly or Pittsburgh? But when I found out Dave and Jason were doing this, I was like, right on. So, boys, Dave, Jason, welcome to the show. And
thank you.
And I would say, just to kick it off, like, where did this origin come from?
So basically, I have to point out something that somebody was going to do a documentary about Lansdale about 20 years ago. Mitch Martinez, who sang for a band called 13 PFP, did a label called Double Down Records. Very inspirational guy in my life, and a well-known guy in really the entire art.
And I will say, Mitch is also pretty well-known in the Philadelphia acting scene. He's not an actor, but, oh, God, does that guy own everything important that you could possibly need?
He's big into film now, and, like, he was starting to do one, but it kind of fell off the racks, This is years ago, like, literally, I think about 20 years ago. So, but really, it was always kind of one of those things that in my brain, I'm like, all right, like, it was cool to do your documentary, have like Lansdale be a part of that. Obviously, it was amazing. I love doing it. But when I met Jason, really, we had met in, I guess, I want to say it was either Jersey or New York.
I think it was Brooklyn. Yeah, when we really started talking.
He was at an Aaron West show, and it was kind of one of the things where, like, we recognized each other, and he just kind of was, gave me the nod. I was like, "What's up, man?" We started talking, and he's mentions, hey, I do documentaries. He was telling me about the one that he had, I think at that time, had just working on or just came out, the pop punk one.
Yeah. It was mostly about how mental health, how pop punk can help mental health. And, I wanted to kind of dive into something, a little bit more deeper. And then, I met Dave, and he's been talking about this, this community that was built in Lansdale. And, I wanted to focus on that.
Yeah.
Sweet.
So that's basically where the seed was planted, in Brooklyn.
Yeah, and also exactly, yeah, and also the Wonder Years are my favorite band. I think this week I'm seeing them for the 48th time, which is no joke. And and Dave knows all those guys, so I was definitely intrigued and wanting to help out.
That's really cool. Really quick, the Wonder Years, the TV show in the 90s, is my favorite TV show of all time. So when I found out there was a band called the Wonder Years, I was like, I didn't know how to take that, but and giving kudos to Dave got the singer for the Pennsylvania hardcore document, and it was just like right out of the blue. He's just like, I got this person, this person, and then like he's like, and then the singer of the Wonder Years. I was like, shit. That band's hot right now. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, man, that was very similar to what happened with Jason and I. Just over a couple different days, I just threw like a billion names at him, and like it's just it's kind of a shame because there's definitely some people that would have been great for it, but things just didn't align. We also filmed the majority of it really like during / post COVID, like the heyday. So like we started filming it in a completely different world, and then things took a change. So that was hard to deal with in a way, but it was very cool to be able to do that.
And
Just
also,
a bunch of names out.
I live in Queens, so I mean, it was difficult for me to kind of figure out a crew and also just getting down to Lansdale. But we made it work. I mean, I wasn't, gonna keep you hanging, and I'm glad we were able to make this happen.
Yeah, for sure.
That's wonderful. And the first thing I think of, I interviewed 200 people right on the nose, and you guys kind of interviewed, I think, about maybe 25 people ish. Is this from what I rough number from what I remember when I saw?
Right.
But was it? I'm just kind of curious because I don't care if there's just 25 people. Was it like pulling teeth getting some of these people? You got some that want to come flying right for you, and then the rest you're just like, I can't tell you how many people I interviewed that I was driving to their house.
Right.
And like I just came off a 12-hour shift. And
Right.
they're like, I came off an 8-hour shift. They called me halfway. They're like, I don't feel good. I'm tired. I'm like, I don't want to do this. I'm like, dude, I'm gonna smash a beer bottle over your freaking head. Like, dude, we're doing this interview today.
Right. Right. I don't think it was that hard. It was like there was definitely people that were like, oh yeah, fuck yeah, sign me up, like wherever, whenever, and like even like some of the old heads like Todd and Chris, like they weren't really that hard to corral for it. They just had to have it work out, like because they got families, there's a lot to it more than just being available. But yeah, I think it was actually pretty easy. And honestly, there was probably at least, I would say, 5 interviews that like really, the stars just didn't align, unfortunately, and we didn't get them or, whatever happened with scheduling. But for the most part, I feel like we had a pretty good amount of people and it was put together fairly, I don't know, streamlined, I would say.
Yeah, I think over the course of this whole thing, I realized like people will do things for Dave, and Dave has a way of finagling ways of doing for people to do things for him, which is awesome.
Master manipulator,
basically, yeah. But yeah, I honestly just think everyone was just very helpful, and even just like getting pictures and videos and music as well. Like everyone wanted to be involved, so it was really just a great communicative process along the way.
Definitely a great community down there. I mean, a lot of yous are still there. Like, usually people hit their 20s and stuff, they might want to pick their bags up and go start a chapter of their life somewhere else. But a lot of you guys are just all still there. And you guys like all still, like I know Dave does those, open mics and stuff. And yeah, maybe that's not everybody from the hardcore scene. There's other types of music, but Dave's never not active in music. This doesn't ever seem to be, out of your blood.
Like at all good at, so like I just kind of run with that. It's weird dealing with like that, like the open mic crowd and stuff like that, because like like from back in the day, like that's the last thing I probably would have been involved with, but I was still friends with those people because like like I always talk about like I loved my high school experience, like because there was a bunch of people from the hardcore scene, the punk scene that I got to grow up with because of that, just because we had the scene we did in our area. So like for me, it was just it's very natural to want to talk about things and just like stay here. Like I don't know. It's also one of those things where like, dealing with animals, like there's some pets, tropical fish, whatever, marine fish, like they have to have such, distinct things to be right for them to even survive. And I've always felt like things like axolotls, which if you don't know what axolotls are, Google them. They will survive in like the worst conditions and they're like critically endangered, but they will like still proceed or, persevere and do well no matter where they are. Like even if they're in a fucking, a tank under a fucking shed somewhere, they'll survive. I always felt like, it's easy to perform and things are perfect. You live in LA, you live in New York, you're surrounded by people that just all want to do the same thing. But it says something when you come from an area, I feel like we do. And it's not unsimilar to a billion suburbs across the world. It's just something that we had what we had here and we had to kind of work for it. And like that, I don't know, it put a big impact on me. And that's what I wanted to do with my life. And that's why I do what I do. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah, I think this is a good story that needed to be told. You guys are definitely great. Even where you guys did the screening, I forgot the name of the place, but
well crafted, yeah.
But I mean, it's crazy because you had people in the scene, you had people from other areas of the scene, but I would say half of that was supporting family that who knows if they even knew what the music was, but
Right.
the place just filled up, and it was great.
It was very cool. Like there was like, you know, parents, people that just got interviewed. Like Mike Doherty's parents had like Lansdale, both had Lansdale shirts on, and they were like so all about it. Like, you know, Jason's family, like I met like people I didn't even know existed. You know, I was just like, oh wow, and they were there, you know, making donations, just, you know, filling the seats up. That honestly, it got to the point where we had to kind of turn some people away, which really sucked. But at the same time, I think it just got to that limit, and then kind of didn't quite boil over. But there was definitely a lot of like supportive family there for sure.
Yeah. So going back through you never left the place. Obviously, you're still living there, but like to go to the old locations where, you know, the foundation of the shows were going on. I mean, was it different bringing the cameras?
It was like we did some shooting like outside of the old Celebrations. Do you remember that place,
Yep.
Lauren? Yeah, like that was such like, and like, but the thing is, you know, it's a mosque now. I'm not gonna like, you know, knock on the door and be like, you know, assalamu alaikum, can we film in here? But you know, it's still cool that those buildings are even around, and we could stand outside some places. Like, you know, we got a lot of footage outside the VFW and a lot of good stuff that we found, you know, just archived on YouTube and stuff. Just great footage from there. But it's definitely weird to like, you know, when we were filming outside the VFW, we actually, a guy knew me from inside and shouted my name, and I went inside to kind of, you know, just say hi. And it was so weird just even being there with Jason. Because it's like it's like taking someone that's like, oh, this is what you were looking for, and you like you get to see it kind of, you know. And like he was just like, yo, can we film? But it didn't work out, unfortunately, to film inside. But it was definitely cool to take someone and kind of show them the sights, you know, like that's the way I kind of looked at it, what we did with this. And it's definitely weird to be back at those venues because, you know, that's all I did with my life after a certain point. And it's just, you know, a building that now is, you know, a house of prayer or like just an empty building now that used to have like such importance to my life. It's wild to see.
And for me, as like a fan of the Wonder Years for so long, like we were literally at the Levin house, we were at the famous VFW. So for me to like be there and filming all this stuff with Dave, who's, you know, a legend in the scene already, I mean, it was pretty awesome to see. I mean, it was just a great experience for me as well. So I was fanboying while I was, you know, actually filming this. So it was definitely a great experience.
Yeah, again, there's this entire scene is like units of people, depending what area and stuff. Some are tighter than others, but again, I stress enough. Lansdale just has that community. There's a reason all you guys are like still partying at Raquel's house, and there's like like 60 of you when it happens, and it's from all walks of the last 20, 25 years. It's crazy.
Yo, let me put my dog in her crate real quick. She's being a jerk.
So Jace, yeah, why he's doing that? So Jace, like, what, you came from a background of documentaries?
Yeah, so I've always you know, enjoyed classic films, and that's honestly all I wanted to do. I wanted to study film. I wanted to make you know, creative stuff with my friends, and that's kind of how it started. And then I just always enjoyed the pop punk genre and emo genre, so I wanted to focus on that. But you know, the Wonder Years were always a band that you know, it was not only like nostalgic for me, but the music that I listen to now stems from my older brother, and um, you know, I've always just tried to, you know, keep that like family aspect and a communicative aspect through everything I do. And I feel like that's, you know, mainly what this music is all about. It's the camaraderie and the friendships that you make. And that's what I wanted to bring to this project as well.
That's great. And are you trying to? I'm guessing, like myself, being a filmmaker, kind of where anybody wants you, you're gonna go. But are you trying to stick, particularly like if you could, in the documentary world, or would you gladly cross over to TV and film?
Whatever the journey
Yeah.
it takes me, you know, whatever whoever's going to pay me at this point, you know, it's fine.
You're absolutely right on that. That's the best answer you could give. And I could tell you, as for someone like my follow-up film to Pennsylvania Hardcore was The Dark Military. Yeah, we shot that on 2 red cams and a gigantic cast and crew, and you're in and out in under 2 weeks. But I sometimes sit there and say which one was more stressful. Like the Pennsylvania hardcore is easier to do, but man, at the same time, it wasn't. Like I always said, I would never do a documentary again. I was like, after a year, but I was also just burnt out of it. But at
It's
least
fun stress. I was extremely stressed because I felt like I was not only directing, I was producing, I was like helping Dave cast. I was getting a crew together, developing other questions with my assistant director, um, and sometimes the crew couldn't make it, and even just like trying to figure out getting down to Lansdale. It was a fun stress, because once we actually got there and got everything set up, it was easily like some of the best times of my life, making this documentary. And I can't thank Dave enough for helping me, be a part of this, because not only in my career, but just like it was a blast making this documentary. It really was.
yeah, they're definitely fun to do. I mean, even though I just said like the stress comes with it and all that, but I always found it extra value when I was making the film. And you guys have probably had the same thing where you're hearing some stories and you might be interviewing someone you knew forever, but they're hitting you with stuff you didn't know about them or situations. And even just like your knowledge of what you think you know everything, but you don't. Like all of a sudden you hear about this place, this group of people that changed everything. And then like in my case, when I was cutting the cameras, I'm like, you just brought up these 3 people in this place. And they're like, yeah, they're like really important. They're like, you should go get them. I'm like, I don't know them. You brought them up. Bring them to me. And I want to do it today. They close by. I'm like, I don't care. Let's go to their house. Like, you have to sometimes be they're your friends, but you got to also to tell the story right. You got to sometimes be the forceful director of like, no, we got to have this,
So that was exactly what happened with Ziggy's interview. I mean, we met Ziggy. Oh, I met Ziggy at the Kristen Kidd show, where Dave and Ziggy's band played at the time, and we interviewed him outside, and he was just telling us like his whole experiences. And I just went to Dave. I was like, we should actually have a sit down interview with him, and it turned out to be one of the most like heartfelt interviews of the whole documentary. I mean, he was so open throughout the whole thing, and thankful for him as well for telling his story, because it's not easy to tell a story like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had him on this show. He was actually my second interview and probably the most talked about, because I had a lot of people like that didn't even know who he was, because all my film friends anyway they don't know the hardcore scene. They're just like, wow, what a stand-up guy and what a story.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was glad to see him a part of that. And he certainly, I always said, like Dave brought me a lot of basically he had signed all the Lansdale. I hardly had to make any calls on it. This was like one break I had in the movie is it's like, we're going to cold cuts and we're going to do all the interviews and everyone. And we got people from China. I'm like, oh my God, we got people from China. But Ziggy was like the other guy, because it was my first big film. And the way I averaged money to do this film, I was like, that's awful. This price. And before you know it, like you pass that mountain quick and you're on the hook, or you could be one of these fugazi filmmakers and let all your friends down and be like, it got too hard, I quit. And I can't do that. I'm just a prideful Italian. I'm like, no matter what. So Ziggy put together a show in Lansdale, and I didn't know about it. Dave's the first one to tell me about it. He's like, there's a show on April 20th. And I'm like, oh my God, really? I'm like, wow, what a perfect time too, because I just bottomed out. I'm like, this is all gonna go to credit cards. I'm just applying for more credit cards. I'm like, this has to happen. But yeah, so that show and all those bands, Dysphoria and Animal House and Strength for a Reason. I wish I could remember every single one, but that helped huge. Like it helped more than anyone can know. But yeah, so boys, now that where would you like to see happen with this film next? I mean, the obvious process would be the film festivals and then distribution, but I mean, what's next? Because you screened it in your hometown now.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the goal. I think we're in the we're almost almost done completely with the editing process. We just send it off to an audio mixer. We have a full audio mix of the whole thing. Now our editor Ryan has to just kind of compile it all together again. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I think that's like the first move. Send us to some festivals, try to get to some distribution, and um, I think what was the main goal for us, and Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, is like this was a gift to Lansdale. Like we wanted to do this for the city of Lansdale, and um, we made a post about it a couple weeks ago and said, "Hey, we appreciate you guys coming out. We're trying to get everything squared away with festival season, but if you do want to see it and you haven't seen it yet, like we can provide you with a link. Just don't like be like a secretive like community is like it usually is, but that's what we wanted. We wanted for the people of Lansdale to get their gift, and we're grateful that we had such positive feedback about it.
Got you. I would try to get this to some musical reviews, like anyone. I would tell you to submit the Rolling Stone magazine, but I don't know if they're gonna pick it. Like if it's worthy of them. But you know what I'm saying. Like you just got to have
Right.
your presentation package ready, and be able to answer any questions. They don't want to hear for a response in any way. Right. have the answers ready and stuff. But when you were doing this, you guys had a fun incident at what was known as the Murder Factory.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So I booked a show, which was Zig's band and Doing Great.
Doing Great.
At that time, their first show. Yeah, and my band, the Battles, play with it, and also this band, Big Handsome, and who else played that?
I didn't go to that.
Oh God, why can't I remember it? Fucking
It was a
why can't
punk band. I forget what they were called.
Yeah. Name. Well, I'm sorry, I can't remember. I booked the show and I can't remember the fucking band that played. My bad. Either way, it was a space that we used to practice at. It's now a photography studio. It's really a great setup. And it's in this really like old historic building in North Wales, like just next to Lansdale. And like when I was there with Kristen, actually at another event that she had there, like, dude, I know this building. We used to practice here. And like we called it the Murder Factory. At that time, it was not up to code, and there was like elevator shafts, like open. It was kind of a death trap. It was dope. But like we practiced there in high school, and like we actually did a show there. There's footage I'm fucking wearing my parents' basement. But yeah, like and Chris was like, well, that's cool. And then that kind of made her want to do a show there because it had some sort of significance to like the history of the scene or whatever. And that was really funny. And like, when we did the show there, like Jason had his whole crew, we walked around the building and like, this is a place I haven't seen in like 20 years. So like, it was very funny to just kind of walk around and be like, oh, wow, this is there. This is still there. You still get to the roof from here, but most of it's pretty nice. There's like artists in there that do stuff, which is awesome. But it's cool to see that there's, I don't know, it's still a space for creativity, I guess is the way to put it. Especially seeing so many venues and stuff that like just turned into usually just empty and like either got torn down or repurposed into churches or whatever. It's cool to see something go where we used to have something.
And it was awesome to see your initial reactions on camera. I'm all for the guerrilla DIY style of filming, like keep the camera rolling, like that type of stuff. And that's what it was that day. I mean, we were definitely not allowed to film up there. But thank you, Kristen, for allowing us, to do that because that was not her space at all. So,
yeah,
for us to go up there and get that footage was, and just to see his reaction. I mean, I know Dave didn't exactly want to be the main character of this film, but he
definitely didn't.
But he, we can see, the progression and like how much he cares for this community. And that's what we also wanted to focus on. He is the mayor of Lansdale. I mean, the so-called mayor of he lives and breathes for this town. So
that's great. And
yeah.
I like what you just said, but between you and Dave about not wanting to be the star. Because trust me, if someone makes another sort of any sort of documentary, music, film, I would love to be a part of it, being interviewed. But when it came to the Pennsylvania hardcore doc, I'm on screen for 9 seconds, 2 clips, and I knew, being the director, I didn't want to be one of them guys like, dude, he's answering every question and every town. Like you have to exclude yourself. You don't want to be that guy that's like, oh, you're making a documentary on yourself. So that's another reason you don't really see my face in my own movie, because I didn't want anyone to be like, oh, it's just Lauren's point of view. This movie's horrible. Like you got to let the people that wrote the scene and made the scene, and that's kind of step by. I just flashed my face in there and be like, I'm put my face in there at least for a few seconds, but that was it.
You pulled
so I totally get down that one.
You're like, huh.
Yep.
I honestly did the same thing. You may have heard my voice a couple times, but yeah, I didn't want to be like, because I wouldn't say I was like an outsider, but I was learning the history of Lansdale. Like throughout the whole process, I was learning names of venues, names of bands, um, certain areas in Pennsylvania that were surrounding it. I would listen to the Wonder Years that they would mention all these specific things, and it's cool to see that come to life finally.
Absolutely. You have to also kind of stop for a second and appreciate. I've said, like, as a filmmaker, particularly, you have to stop for a second and appreciate what's happening. Like if it's just a Zoom of work and you're not enjoying yourself, so sometimes, like, I would have someone sitting down, I'm interviewing, and I'm like being all cool and I have the questions, but in my head, I'm like, why are they giving me their time? Like I'm saying that in my head. Why are they talking to me out of all people? Yeah. But
that's how I felt when I was interviewing Soupy. Well, first off, I was scared shitless. I really was scared out of my mind. Dave calmed me down. But honestly, like I was just so proud to be there and be able to sit with him. And I mean, there's a picture of me sitting next to Soupy, like trying to figure out a shot. Like that was like one of the best days of my life. I mean, it was awesome. I gave Dave a big hug after and just said thank you. I mean, I was so thankful for that day. And it was a great interview.
Absolutely. So, and again, I can't stress with this area. Like Dave, you have, like I said, I know you're still doing this open mic stuff and keeping things together, but what is it about that area as a whole, just between hardcore and music, everyone who picks up those open mics, what is it about your area that keeps you guys so tight?
I think one thing that was kind of touched in the doc that was not like necessarily like in the end edits wasn't like kind of focused on, it was that we have a really good music program here, or at least did. I'm not going to act like I know much about it now. It's been 20 years or so since I've dealt with it, but like our music program in North Penn was like really good. And like it's not to say that other suburbs don't have good music programs, because they do, and a lot of people come from other school districts, but like I think it's a combination of that and us being in this weird, because Lauren gets this, being in the scene between Allentown and Philadelphia was just this like crossroads of being like, hey, stop beating all of our friends up. And I swear to God, we're just like trying to exist, and having to deal with that for a year, and just having to like kind of just be this like, I don't know, annoying thing that's just still around. And people are like, why is Lansdale even a thing? And I'm like, all right, well, I mean, because we're good at music, and like we deal with whatever you dish, at us. And it's just a weird thing that people, if you're not from an area like that, I don't think you can relate to it. People in Philly are like, oh, fuck the suburbs. What? We're like, yeah, we get that. It sucks. And you still say that to us. Yet, I mean, let's be real. Most Philly bands, all suburb kids, and like, not everybody, like you said, has to pack their bags and leave a town just because, they turn 19 or whatever. I think a lot of it had to do with just a lot of people wanting to do the same thing, and that was just being a band or do shows and just have to do.
Yeah, and I could tell you also, being the guy that did the Pennsylvania hardcore documentary, I knew, not to toot my own horn, I knew I was the perfect candidate for this, because I wasn't going to let any sort of politics or this one doesn't like that one get in the way. If I felt you were the person to tell the story, no matter what area, I was getting you. I mean, I've never gone into someone at a show say, Laura, walk with me a second. I don't like this person, this person, and this person. Make sure they're not in your movie. And I'm like, are you holding my camera? Are you helping me in any way? Like, why? Because I don't like them. Like, dude, like, I like you. I like them. They're going to be in a movie. I had to literally do those speeches and stuff. And if there was any super critique, I know what I made. I understand.
Right.
You can't really tell every bit of every area in 90 minutes. Right. It's impossible. So I made the base of, we're going to go through a little of each area, tell you who the people were, the bands, and who kind of created it, and the clubs. Boom, you're in the next town. Yes, there's stuff that's going to be skipped over, but I mean, I did have some people come up to me and be like, you know, why'd you even do the central area? No one cares. Like, why did you do Lansdale? And then I'd always put a fork in the ground, be like, I did it because they exist. I did it because they're good people. I did it because the scene's there. I did it because it's right. I don't care that you wanted more time in your area. You know, some of these people were telling me this after the movie was filmed. So while I was filming it for 2 years, they didn't come to me with any advice or any help whatsoever. And I'm just like, so when it comes to that, listen, everyone I'm talking about right there, if you want to say I'm trash talking, they're still my friends. Just that rolls off me like nothing. Like I'm that's the hardcore me. Like I listen. No, this is the way I'm doing it anyway.
Even with our film, I mean, we had Antichrist, who's a drag queen. We had a whole segment on Wedgwood. You know, we didn't just talk about the music.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure if Wedgwood was that the skateboard area.
That was the skate park.
Yeah.
I mean, we wanted to focus on the fact that Lansdale is a do-it-yourself community, and without everyone coming together, you know, this scene would just die. And we've, you know, talked about it will never die. Schwa even says it in the film. Lansdale will just never die. And it won't, because of the people that come together and make it work and make it and just keep showing up. And, you know, it's not just about the music scene. You know, Dave talked about his friend Amy. You know, there's a amazing artists, there's amazing performers, and you know, it's just a great community for everyone to come together, and that's what we want to focus on.
And if you really break down
that movie,
God.
No, I was just,
no.
I was gonna say, you know that movie, the new guy.
Yeah.
At the end of that, well, like when the dude from the old school like figures out who he is, he comes up, and like all the whole school is like different then, and then they stick up for him. That's how I was like, why is that far-fetched? Like, why is that not just how people act? And I feel like I really took that, at least as far as like, you know, talking about things or trying to be inclusive and like, you know, doing something like this doc. I tried to be like, all right, well, it's for everybody, you know, like it's not just about me and my friends that do music. It's, you know, my friends that I've made throughout the years doing different things, and people I'm not even friends with. You know, like I wish there was more people that I could have gotten, but you know, it's just like one of these things where, you know, at the end of the day, people I know we got involved, but I kind of trailed off there. My bad.
No, I completely get that. Like that, I didn't get anybody from Pure Hell in the documentary. I didn't get anybody from Keg Dynamite or Ink and Dagger, and it wasn't like I wasn't trying to get them. It's just it didn't work out. You have to move on. And I completely and totally get where you're talking about when you're bringing up the skateboard stuff and other parts of Lansdale. When I first got into Scranton, Wilkes-Barre hardcore scene, because that's where I'm originally from, there was still going before my time, but when I jumped in '93, there was a place called the Factory in Wilkes-Barre, and you would have like 2 hardcore bands, 2 death metal bands, a band that sounded like Nirvana, a band that may have sounded like Quicksand, and a rap group and a pure hippie group. And the reason this was all together was there's not enough of those music genres to stand on their own. Like you're trying to just make some sort of a scene. And that's how that started, until eventually each one of those groups could kind of, all right, we're strong enough that we don't have to book those other style of bands and stuff. But and if you really look at what hardcore came the last 20 years, hardcore band members go to the heavy metal bands and back and forth, and everyone kind of has their hands in everything. I mean, it's crazy what there's people booking bands locally, I connect like Tim Bohr from Bad Luck 13. He books like the stadiums in Philadelphia. Like he's got the ties to that stuff. Like everybody, like Kevin from Surrounded was like on tour with Limp Bizkit and Korn and all that as like a tech. I don't know what part of which tech was, but it's just crazy. So when you're saying you brought in the skateboarders, et cetera, and you're showing it around your area, that's what hardcore is now. It's not just like, we don't fit with no one else. Right. No, just us. Anyone who's holding on to that, it's kind of over. You know, right. It's like we still have a message. We're still a big family. But
don't forget the struggle. But like, if you didn't have a struggle and you're not for the streets, maybe don't rely on that as your backing. You know, like I will always be a hardcore kid. That's the way I feel it. Even if I really don't go to that many hardcore shows, and I haven't booked a hardcore show in near 5 years. This week actually is the 5-year anniversary of the Stokey show, which was the last time I booked a hardcore show. And like, I'm still here for hardcore. I still act like a hardcore kid. I still make fun of everything like a hardcore kid. So like, but what you're saying is 100% right. Like nothing comes from, especially in the suburbs, comes from like organically. Like, oh, we have this hardcore scene, or we have this punk scene. You have the scene. You have music. Like Derek Calhoun, who's another dude around my age that like has booked around here forever. He taught me that. He's like, it's not just the hardcore scene, man. It's the scene. Like that's why you have to have each other's backs, and like that resonates with me. It's you have to rely on other people when you don't come from a city. You have to kind of be there for other people.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I get the top reason I moved to Philadelphia is for ECW wrestling at the time, and that's where I had to be and everything. But I did look at, I wanted constant hardcore shows and didn't want to have to drive an hour and a half, like kind of Tuesday night and stuff, and crawl into work the next morning and stuff. And I wanted a big change, but I totally get what you're saying when people are holding on to the old tough guy stuff. Like I've been well vocal about when you're like hitting 30 and you're still pulling the hoodie up, and I'm kind of laughing at you, like, dude. No one's saying you're not tough, and that ain't a part of what we are. But man, you got to put that away. Like, you stop describing how tough you are to people as a 1/3 dead in your life.
It's definitely awkward to see that because, like, we deal with people like between our ages, and like they'll deal with like social media, and like they'll seem like they get how it works, then they'll post like that Mike Tyson quote, like the internet made a bunch of people feel like you could disrespect people, but not. It's like, or like people don't always agree with you, and like these people have existed for like millions of years, and you're just not used to hearing like adversity. Like, I'm sorry that this is news to you, that other people don't agree with everything. You fucking should. But like, yeah, it's brutal, dude. I see it every day. You just have to keep your mouth shut because people love to punch me. So.
Yeah, sometimes you feel like the adult among children with that. Like, I hate pulling that term, but you just have to, like, this person can't listen. They don't hear, so don't even. So you got to accept them at face value as your friend, or not let them be your friend anymore. And there's one spot I never wanted issues with, was within hardcore scene. And like, even if once in a blue moon, I could feel some heavy words come my direction, I could shake it off. And, everybody knows, if I had to ever use my martial art background, then I have to. But other than that, like, I'm okay. For the most part, I was always freely to go to any state and not have any issues. And that's the way I plan to keep it anyway.
Right. That's what I relate to too, because especially in the hardcore scene, you're just like, well, you don't want to like always be looking over your shoulder, and like it's taxing. Nobody, like, that's not fun to have to be on guard all the time. So I feel like that you always want to keep your door open, like not shut it just because you got a lot to say. Yeah,
maybe in your young 20s, it was kind of exciting, and then after a while, like, I don't need this. Like, you don't need the looking over your shoulder every 2 seconds. That I don't think we're ever, just the way the world is, and it's much better in a way that it's gone. Although I hate how people run their mouths, I really do. But you can't ever go back to what it was. Number one, there's cameras everywhere, so you're not going to get away with anything. And what happened with Ziggy Alone's just like a reminder that if some person gets the right lawyer and it has the money to push it, you could be upriver. And that's also really freaking sad.
That's putting business out there that doesn't need to be, but it's a shame to see someone that didn't do something go to jail for something. And there's a lot of I'm glad Ziggy's out. I'm glad Ziggy did what he did. He's an untouchable guy as far as pretty much is concerned. It's just, it was a tragedy to go through that, dude. Like, we all wrote him letters. It was fucking terrible. But you know what? It's also in the past. So we can live in hope for that, and just, try to act right. That's the way I'd see it. Don't try to fight everybody. Don't try to, act like you have to be the hero all the time, I guess. But at the same time, I got the biggest mouth in the world, so I get it.
We live in a double standard world, my friend. But boys, we'll get ready to take this home. But is there anything else that needs to be said about your doc? And most importantly, is there any way anybody listening could help you?
I think just be patient with us. Yeah, just be patient with us with this whole process. We're trying to figure it all out, and if you do want to see it before we actually do the full public release, just let us know. We can get it sent out. But yeah, I mean, I just wanted, I already, I've said it before. I think me coming in as somebody who's not from Lansdale and just being so welcomed, and not even just because I was doing something like this. It was just because, everyone was just so open and welcoming. And I never had that before growing up, or just, where I'm at right now. So it's really awesome to see how much pride, Lansdale people have for Lansdale. So I'm glad we were able to make this happen.
Dave?
Yeah, I think I mean, as far as helping goes, I feel like keeping it real about it's the thing to do. And also for people that haven't seen it, that might be seeing it soon, might just hit us up for a link or whatever. Like, I think a lot of people got the idea that it was just strictly about Lansdale music. And originally it pretty much was, but with the COVID and everything, things, gears changed a little bit. And I'd like to think that it's really for everybody. It's for the past, it's for the present, it's for the future. It's for the, the art kids, the fucking punks. It's for the hardcore kids, for the skaters. It's for everybody. Like, there's a million people that I would have loved to have gotten involved with it that didn't work out. But I really feel like there's a lot of bases covered, and I hope people just keep an open mind with it.
Yeah, and I would say to anybody out there that's not familiar with the hardcore scene, like, this is a documentary, on Lansdale, particularly hardcore music, but don't look at it as it's like you're going to be seeing lots of performances by the bands. It's really behind layers of who these bands are. It's more about interviews in the areas. So basically what I'm trying to say is, for everybody who loves documentaries, this is worth your time. And
also, it's not just about the biggest band that come out of there, the Wonder Years. I mean, I think people will think about Lansdale as the Wonder Years because they became so huge. But I think throughout the whole process, I realized, like, it's not just about them. It's about everyone coming together, and there's also a bunch of other bands that were really successful in that area. So, and the Wonder Years were also like a catalyst for other bands, and also they looked up to other bands that were starting up in Lansdale. So it's just really nice to see the history throughout the whole thing.
Sweet. Well, Dave, Jason, I thank you so much for taking the time to tell your story on Average Superstar TV. Sweet.
Anytime.
And I will also say, for everybody on Facebook, there's a Lansdale group called was it Lansdale Scene? What's it, Dave?
Yeah.
What's it called?
Yeah.
Lansdale Scene. If everybody wants constant updates, obviously you guys could look up Dave and Jason here on social media, but that's usually kind of the group where you could get constant updates on the band. But definitely check that out on Facebook. I will say thank this audience for taking the time once again for supporting Average Superstar TV. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon, Stitcher, and iHeartRadio. We drop a new show every Monday morning. And with that, I will tell everybody that the party is over. And I thank Jason and Dave for stopping by.